Don's not here, so we don't have to fear the microphone being passed around. I just about tackled him whenever he started doing that. All right, well, might as well go ahead and get things rolling here. Okay, so real quick, let's just run through the points up to where we are now. We can know what is true. So like there is a kind of a movement that says, can you really even know things? Can you know what truth is? So we kind of started out with just the fundamental level. Truth about reality can be known. Also, opposites cannot both be true. Again, seems obvious, but kind of laying the groundwork there. Either there is a God or there isn't a God. It can't be both. You may not know God perfectly, but if he exists, then he exists. It can't be, yes, he exists for Aaron, and no, he does not exist for Austin, right? And both of those can't be true. And then we kind of got into that. So does God exist? So we talked about that and the different arguments, the cosmological argument, teleological, ontological, all the kind of thoughts, the moral argument. So then if God exists like a supernatural being, then supernatural things can happen. He can make supernatural things can happen. And we call those miracles, right? So if God exists, then miracles are possible. And one of the things that we talked about is even an atheist or scientist have to grant several miracles. From nothing into everything, right? So that's a miracle, that there was nothing and then all of a sudden there was everything. And then, so how did that happen? That's miraculous. It's supernatural. It's not natural for nothing to spontaneously explode into everything. Non-life to life. So we have everything. How do we go from like organic matter or inorganic matter and molecules and chemicals to life, right? From chaos to order. So several things have had to have happened. Miracles are usually performed, in the Bible at least, in connection with some type of truth claim. Usually. So I think the author would say always, which I would maybe push back on a little bit. But so basically God exists, he can cause miracles, and then the next step along our path has been the New Testament documents are reliable. So we looked at that. And the New Testament, that's reliable, claims Jesus is a unique convergence of miracles, right? So that's kind of where we are. Jesus claimed to be God and confirmed it through miracles. So that's the step we're in chapter 8. And we've looked at several miracles that Jesus did and talked about that quite a bit. We're going to talk about the most significant miracle that Jesus performed today, and that's his death and resurrection. So if you claim to be a supernatural deity, and then you tell everyone you're going to die and then be raised from the dead, and then you die and are raised from the dead, it kind of gives credence to the fact that you're claimed to be a supernatural being. So I enjoyed the way that we did the last class. So we're going to break this into two sections. We're going to first look at kind of the truth claim that Jesus actually physically died, because it's pretty popular in the Muslim world to hear this claim that Jesus didn't actually die. He just passed out. he swooned, and he was just knocked out for a few days, and then came back to life, and could clearly, after you're in a coma for 3 days, you can just get up, unwrap your clothes, roll away a stone that weighs a ton, and get it. That happens regularly. So, but we want to at least give credence to that and look at some of the claims from the New Testament on that. So there are 12 claims. So let's go. Let's go in groups of 2 here, or you guys groups of 2, 3-ish, and then we'll do these points in groups of 2 and just kind of go through it. So, so John, I'm going to put you with Alan and with you guys, and then you 3 work together, Micah and Kimberly, you 3 back there, Huddleston's, and Jace is here too. He was kneeling down. I didn't see him there. Yeah. Well, I saw Lauren, but I didn't see you, and I was going to put Lauren with Cole and Sarah. So maybe you 4 can work together. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. You 4 work together. Austin, Carrie, Aaron, April, and then you guys are by yourself. You chose to sit way over there, away from people. Just kidding. Plus, you're wearing matching shirts today, so we can't contaminate that. Okay, so starting up here, Jesus actually died physically. If you're in the book, this is on page 145.
What is it in the online?
It's under the heading "Jesus actually died physically."
Yeah.
Page 127.
127. Okay. Okay. Does everybody have access to that? Okay, let me know, and you can use my book, or we might have an extra book. Okay, so you guys do 1 and 2. Jesus' death was predicted in the Old Testament and in his ministry. That's points 1 and 2 for you guys. You 3 over here do 3 and 4. The nature of the crucifixion assures his death, and Jesus' side was pierced, and a mixture of blood and water flowed. Okay. Kimberly and Micah, you guys do 5 and 6, which is Jesus' dying words were heard from the cross, and the Roman soldiers who were hardened executioners pronounced Jesus dead. Back in the back, Jace, Lauren, Cole, Sarah, you guys do 7 and 8, Pilate and Jesus' burial. Up here, you guys do 9 and 10, numerous witnesses and appearances that Jesus made. And then 11 and 12, on top of all this, non-Christian historians and earliest Christian writers. So we'll kind of tackle it from there, and I'll give you about 5 minutes, 6 minutes to read through that, and then we'll quickly run back through, and then we'll do Jesus' resurrection. Does that make sense? Okay.
What are we supposed to do?
Okay, so read through those 2 points that I assigned to you, and then summarize them for the rest of the group, and basically just share what you took from those 2 points, and try and kind of rephrase it in your own words. What are those 2 points saying, and how does it contribute to the idea that the proof that Jesus really did die? Why would you bring those 2 points up when discussing Jesus' death? And some prompts I'll write. Well, I can't write anything, but some prompts are, I noticed, or this reminds me of something else, or even I wonder this, okay? So, on your mark, get set, go. We're in a little small group work. I assign your parents this and 11 and 12, just to read through that and then tell the group what, kind of summarize it, like what is this saying, and why does it contribute to the discussion that Jesus really did die. I think that's what we're saying. He really did die, and then we're going to spend the last half. He really was raised.
Okay.
So, if you want to just look through those two, you have the book. Cool. So you can, yeah, whatever. Okay, one more minute of discussion and then we'll share with the group. Maybe if you guys were actually talking about the text. Sounds good. I don't remember that being part of the. Okay. Okay. Okay, go ahead and wrap that up. Finish your sentence. Okay, so it starts out this section with the idea that it's clear a prerequisite to resurrection physically is death physically. You can't really resurrect if you didn't die. So again, we're going to look at kind of the biblical evidence here and some extra biblical evidence that Jesus died, and we'll see kind of again we've already established that the New Testament is one of, if not the most reliable documents from this time, right? Of antiquity, the New Testament is extremely reliable and extremely supported by evidentiary matter. So we're going to look at what the New Testament says and what that looks like. So number 1 and 2, you guys take us through that really quickly. No, we're not doing microphones. No microphones, Mike. No, we're not going to freak people out.
Doesn't freak anybody out. That'd be helpful. Okay,
No, we cannot. Can we all hear? We can all hear. We're good. Alan, or John, whoever wants to talk there.
So in the Old Testament, it starts out by saying that there's going to be this person to come, and that God's going to send him. And then it talks about basically that this person is going to be kind of, there's a combination of the Old Testament with the New Testament, and that link is Jonah. So there's many times in the New Testament that refers back to Jonah, which was in the belly of a fish for 3 days. And so then Jesus is claiming, I'm going to be like Jonah. I'm going to be in the belly of, and he's saying the earth, for 3 days. And so what happened to Jonah? Well, he was spit out of that belly. And so in the same way, then Jesus is going to be out of the earth.
Good. You guys, did he miss anything that you wanted to point out? All right. So that's cool. So Old Testament talks about the Messiah being killed. In Psalm, Daniel, Isaiah 53 says, he will be cut off from the land of the living and make his grave with the wicked, but with the rich at his death. So just really like 700 years before Jesus lived, whoever this is talking about is going to be cut off from the land of the living, be buried with rich men, and like all of that. So there's prophecy, Old Testament prophecy. And then New Testament, Jesus brings that in. And even in Matthew 17, the Son of Man is going to be betrayed into the hands of men. They will kill him, and on the 3rd day he will be raised to life. So before he even dies, he prophesies his death. So that's like just laying the groundwork, right? So good. Anybody want to point out anything on that? Okay. Numbers 3 and 4 about Jesus' death. What do you guys have?
Basically that modern medicine can show that there would have been no way for him to survive the crucifixion between bleeding as well as being punctured.
Good. You guys notice anything that you want to point out in that?
I think the suffocation part was a big part.
Right.
Because, how can you recover from that?
Yeah.
Stop breathing.
Yeah, right.
You don't breathe, you have no air in your lungs, you stop breathing. So I think that was a key point there, is just the suffocation part of it. That he would have died without a piercing.
Right, yeah. Good. Michaela, you got anything?
I'm not supposed to be talking, I got my wisdom teeth.
Oh, okay. Yeah, don't want to mess with that. Yeah, so, the whole suffocation thing, like you're hanging there and your ankles or whatever are nailed into the wood, so the only way to breathe would be to lift yourself up to take a breath. So imagine you're lifting yourself up by your pierced ankles and hands to take a breath, and that's why they would break your legs, so that when you tried to do that, you physically wouldn't be able to breathe, and then you would suffocate, right? So, yeah. Anything else about 3 and 4? If you guys were able to read ahead, did you underline anything or want to point out anything from any of that? Okay, cool. So crucifixion and just the medical evidence that we have there recorded points out Jesus' death. Okay, you guys go 5 and 6.
Yeah, so Jesus, after he dies, or he says, like, into your hands I commit my spirit. So the Roman crucifixion would have been something that was very common. The people that witnessed Jesus' crucifixion would have witnessed hundreds of crucifixions, but something was different about his. After he breathed his last, there were eyewitnesses that were saying, wow, something was different about this man. The centurion says, surely this was a righteous man. And then other people gathered and saw, and they were beating their breasts as they went away. They knew something was different about his death than any others that they had seen.
Good. Anything, Kimberly, anything you want to add to that? Okay.
She's got number 6.
Oh,
I have, yeah.
go number 6 then.
Okay, so because these Roman centurions were, like it says, hardened executioners, meaning that they had done probably hundreds, if not thousands, of these in the past. So they knew what it looked like. They knew what it looked like when they were close to death, and then when they were already dead. So they knew that they had to. If you look in John, it talks about how they went and they broke the legs of the first man, and then they went and broke the legs of the third man. But they knew they didn't have to do that with Jesus. He was already dead, and that was the end of it. They knew what that looked like.
Yeah. Yeah, so it would have been an effort to breathe. And so you would know if somebody hasn't taken forth the effort to take a breath and they've just been hanging there motionless, clearly they're dead, right? So we don't need to break this guy's legs. So experienced people pronounced him dead, right?
Brad, I would also say on that, we don't know the accounts of the thieves next to him, but we know the absolute beating that Christ took leading up to this too, right? And so it's not like he was just put up on a cross in a nice and fresh condition.
Right.
We have the account, right? So, I mean, the beating, the blood loss, all the things leading up to this point, carrying his own cross there, I mean, yes, it was probably a quicker process knowing all he had endured leading up to this.
Right. Very good. Yeah. And then, Micah, you said, I probably should have covered this with thee, but you said you had noticed a couple things leading up to the death and resurrection.
I think Jesus probably does this as much for his disciples as he does for skeptics now. But he kind of like prepped his disciples for his death and resurrection by performing 3 resurrections before his own. And the first one was Jairus' daughter. And in that case, they thought maybe she was still sleeping. And so, you know, maybe you could say, I don't even know if she was fully dead. And he raised her from the dead. And so it was like she had immediately died and he immediately raised her. And the second one was the widow of Nain's son. And they're carrying him through, I can't remember, I couldn't find the story. I think he had been dead a day and they were burying him. So he was still like on the cot. And Jesus stops the funeral procession and raises him from the dead. So he's been dead a little longer. And then the third one is Lazarus, and he had been in the tomb for 3 days. And so he kind of shows his power in resurrection a little bit at a time.
Yeah.
Like where maybe the first one you could have been like, maybe she was just sleeping, maybe she was passed out. And then the second one, about to be put in the ground, that shows a little more power. And then Lazarus, 3 days, like it's a replication almost of his own death and resurrection. So he's showing them the power that he has before he does that himself.
Excellent. Yeah. Yeah.
It's just kind of a cool progression.
Yeah. Yeah. Progression to his own. Yeah. Really good. Number 7 and 8, would you guys have Cole and Jason, Lauren, and Sarah?
So, I think just the gist of this was, Joseph of Arimathea was asking for the body of Jesus. Pilate goes to make sure that he's dead to hand him over. And so the preceding verses of that, knowing it was the preparation day before the Sabbath, there's an urgency to get this work done right before the Sabbath. And so, Pilate goes to ask the centurion, the executioner, right? Yes, he is dead. We're handing him over. You're right. I'm making sure the job is done, right? And then I think part of what was said earlier on the preceding points, it's the Jesus isn't being tended by his closest people, right? That could hide this up, or it's like, oh, he's actually alive. Let's make this whole thing look like it's a fake to save him, And so it's people who knew it was different, and that goes to even like the 100 pounds of like the linen cloth.
Right.
We were talking about how that was like more typical for like a royal burial. And so Nicodemus was mentioned again, right? So people who like knew there was something different, had respect for the process, but weren't these people that were his inner circle that would, try and fake this thing.
Good. Very good, yeah. Anything else, Jace, Lauren, Sarah, that you guys want to add to that? Cool. Lots.
Real quick,
Yeah, yeah.
Because they mentioned like the food and water and everything.
Uh-huh.
So we also talked about, it's like, man shall not live by bread alone. So I don't think we hang our hat on the fact that he had lack of food, because we have other accounts where he lacked food and
Right.
was just fine, So I don't think that's necessary, given all these preceding points, right? That's where we need to hang our hat. It's like, I get it logically, yeah, with the state he's in, that makes sense, but that could be called into question.
Yeah. I think it's good. Go ahead, Jason.
Sorry, just one thing out of that, the 100, like talking about the 100 pounds of linen and oils and that kind of stuff. I think that just kind of again shows that whoever was involved, like Joseph involved in that, he would have, right? It's not just that, oh, throw a bed sheet over him and we're good to go, right? 15 seconds and he's prepared. And it took hours and hours. I mean, you speculate, but we have records of how long and how intensive these processes were, and it just shows to emphasize, like, no, they took their time. It wasn't like a pauper grave kind of thing.
Yeah. Right. Good. Yeah, and I appreciate you pointing that out, because I meant to say this before we started this. I don't want to just go through and just assume the author is perfect on everything that he says, right? I want to approach this with a critical eye, and even whenever there are some things that he points out and you go, I don't know if I wouldn't bring that. I think it's better to not bring up weak arguments just for the sake of trying to pile on the arguments. Hey, here's 20 arguments. Half of them are pretty weak, but there's 20 of them. No, let's just focus on the 5 or 10 that carry the most weight, and not like try and bring in weak arguments. Does that make sense? So I appreciate you saying that, because he points out if he was not dead with 100 pounds of cloth and spices, then the lack of food, water, and medical treatment would have finished him. That's speculative. That's not worth, we can't prove that. There's nothing, convincing about that, right? So the 100 pounds of cloth and spices on a guy who had been beaten and crucified, that's, pun intended, that's pretty heavy, right? Kind of evidence. So, so don't take this guy as the Bible. He's just trying to work through and point some things out. Austin, Aaron, Carrie, April, what do you guys have? You had 9 and 10, right?
Yes.
Okay.
9 has kind of already been covered because of who was there and who was involved. People that hated him, people that it was their job, and then people that loved him. So he would have been recognized by many of these people. The soldiers, it was their job. This is what they did. None of them wanted to die. We see that when the centurion thought that the people had gotten out of jail and he was going to kill himself. So they took their job seriously. The Jews wanted him done with. They were done messing around. They had no reason to fake it because they just would have come back. Talking about, the weaker of the arguments, that if anybody was going to fake it, it would have been the people that loved him. But there was a lot of work that then went into it with the wrapping and all of that. So
Yeah.
the witnesses, good, bad, and ugly.
Yep.
And then the number 10, Micah kind of brought this up with the noticing of what was before, but it would have been very dramatic impact if he had just, fainted, if he was just ill. It would have not been as shocking if he was dragging out, where he actually was walking around, he was fully aware that he wasn't seeking medical treatment, he was back doing the job that he had come for.
Right. Yeah, so even, we talk about miracles have an instantaneous effect. Like you don't heal someone and of blindness and it takes 6 months for them to recover their sight, right? Or you don't say, hey, get up and walk, and then a year later he's able to walk, right? That's not a miracle, that's physical therapy, right? But when you tell someone, so again, it's not like he was nursed back to health. He had disappeared in 3 days. Where did he go? He was in the tomb. So, and then he was seen walking around and appearing and talking to people along the way. So, okay, good. And then 11 and 12. What do you guys take from that section of the reading?
I think of 11 as more like thinking of Josephus.
Yep.
And just having the facts and figures of his history of this is what occurred. No matter whether I believe it or whether I don't, this did occur, and they're following it through. And actually, the fact that you can see the scars in his hands. I mean, they were able to see it, so obviously it was him. Kind of thing. So that's just a historical view in 11. And then 10, it goes to more of, 12,
Yeah.
it goes to more of those who were followers who were saying, yes, this occurred, and hey, all 12 of his apostles suffered and died also, and went through pain and suffering along with it. So it's just icing on the cake, I guess.
Right.
You start looking at this.
Very good. Very good. So non-Christian historians at the time referenced it, and early Christian writers referenced it as well. And so again, like after 2,000 years, we're like, I'm pretty sure that guy died. Okay, that's a little bit far removed to make that assertion. But people contemporary, all around the cross, connected, allies and enemies of Jesus, and all the historians, they all agree and assume the death of Jesus. So I think we have a lot of really good foundation to claim Jesus actually did die. So, anything else? We've got like 10 minutes to cover his resurrection now. So, so let's jump right into that. So the last part of chapter 8, I was thinking about assigning this, but we don't really have time. So the evidence for resurrection is just as strong, if not stronger, than his death, right? So what, just from reading through that, if you had time to read through that, what are some of the strongest arguments for the resurrection of Jesus that you noticed?
The amount of witnesses
The amount of witnesses, right?
that actually saw him, actually touched him, were able to actually see after the fact that he was put into the tomb.
Good, yeah. So he references 12 different occasions that are recorded. To Mary Magdalene in John 20, some other women in Matthew 28, 2 disciples on the road to Emmaus in Luke 24. He appeared to Peter in John 20. The 10 apostles in Luke 24 and John 20. 11, Thomas joined them in John 20. 7 of the apostles in John 21 when they're fishing. The Great Commission in Matthew 28 and Mark 16 is recorded. 500 people supposedly, 1 Corinthians 15. And then Paul says, hey, you can go talk to most of the people that saw him, most of these 500 people that saw him, right? James in 1 Corinthians 15. The ascension in Acts 1 says all the disciples were there. And of course, Paul hears him on the road to Damascus. So lots and lots of witnesses of his resurrection. What else stood out to you? What else stands out to you in evidence for the resurrection?
The fact that not only his followers saw him, but that the Roman soldiers were still guarding the tomb even after it was empty.
Right.
Because otherwise they would die if they had left their
Yeah.
post. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, that speaks to, like, they believe that
Yeah. Yeah, definitely something out of the ordinary. Like, he didn't fight them off and leave the tomb, right? After he unwrapped himself. They were there and they were like, we don't know what to do. I guess we'll stay here because we don't want to look like we abandoned our post. We didn't get beat up. We just, woke up and he's gone, right?
So when you look back at, even from Jesus' birth, when, I think it was Herod, one of Herod's at the time, right? Basically, hey, we're going to go through this land and kill every child 2 years and younger, right? This was a big to-do, not just now, but it has been for a long time, right? And so it's not lost on them the necessary completion of this task to make sure that for sure he's gone, it's done with, we won. We're gonna make sure nobody tries to, grave rob and let this thing have life again or anything like that. So it's just like they had skin in the game in guarding this tomb. They knew what was on the line here. And yet, obviously, we know how that unfolded. But I just look at the severity over the course of Jesus' life and the intentionality that they would have had to make sure this was nail in the coffin and done.
Good. Yep.
So
Excellent.
it's not like, hey, followers of Jesus, go post watch over his tomb.
Right. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. What else from this section stood out to you?
Brad, this might be a little bit kind of redundant, but you were saying that there were 12 different groups of people that he came to, but it was also at 12 different times.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just this group, and this group all in one day, whatever. It was over quite a bit of time. What is it, like, 45 days? I don't know.
Yeah.
However many days, but it was over many days,
Yeah.
not just one day, different groups, so.
Yep.
I think that just proves more that it was legitimate.
Yep.
Brad, I don't think it was pointed out in there, but the Bible talks about the skeptics of him actually, this being Jesus? Are you serious? Like, it didn't make sense.
Right.
And so even his inner circle doubted that this even came about. And to me, that honestly shows more truth into this whole story as well about his resurrection. Because if they had been told, hey, he's going to be dying, but it wasn't to a point that they really got it.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they actually hear, what? I gotta actually, touch him.
Yeah, right. I think the letter D on this list of kind of points is really powerful. You might ask, well, what about his family? What did they think of all this, right? Well, one of his brothers, James, did not believe, right? John 7 says, even his brother James did not believe in him, okay? Yet, Paul says he appeared to James after his resurrection, and then we have the book of James written by a believing brother. So you have the steps of this brother who didn't believe and then was converted to believe after the resurrection, right? So we don't have every detail of his story, but you get little glimpses. Oh, he didn't believe here. Jesus appeared to him, and then we have his letter. Clearly he's a believer. Clearly he's a follower and a disciple by the end of his life, right after he's witnessed all this. So I think that's really powerful. So if like your own brother dies and is resurrected, and you didn't believe in him while he was alive, and now you do, okay, that's pretty convincing evidence. Anything else? Saul's testimony?
Because he never saw Jesus.
Right.
When he was on earth.
Right.
He sees him on the way to
Damascus.
and is changed forever. And then he has some interaction with some of these eyewitnesses to Jesus' death. And complete 180
Yeah.
from the life he's living.
Yeah, very good. Yep. And I like letter F. Lots of like little things that you wouldn't necessarily expect to be in a fairy tale. Like the grave clothes were left behind, that had the crucifixion scars on them, could be touched, did not eat physical food. Luke affirms they gave him a piece of broiled fish and some honeycomb, and he took it and ate it in their presence. So little things that kind of point to reality as opposed to a fairy tale or a myth. So there are some objections kind of at the end to the physical resurrection. I mean, 2 objections that I didn't feel like were even worth discussing. So they're pretty feeble. But again, yeah, Jace.
One note I'll make on the first objection about
Yeah.
the physicality versus spirituality.
Yeah.
That seems kind of benign to us, but there are groups like Jehovah's Witnesses who will say, yep, he rose spiritually, and there's a whole bunch of stuff there that they believe, right?
Right.
The fact that we can point to 4, 5, 6 evidences, no, it's a pretty strong implication that it's a physical resurrection, it's a physical body. Those things are important to key in on.
Good. Excellent. Yeah. Pretty quick, hitting the high points there, but at least we're getting some exposure to it, and hopefully have some talking points or some things we can bring up if we're in a discussion with somebody. Thank you for your input.